I used to hate people. I hated when they took my kindness for granted, when they cut in line, when they gossiped, or when they had a little power and acted like they were Julius Caesar. And the funny thing is that I learned to enjoy their behavior because it gave me an excuse to get upset or argue with them. But eventually I had to face the truth. I am miserable. If I keep living like this, I will probably have a heart attack by the age of 50. So gradually I changed my approach towards people, and things have improved dramatically. When someone is being rude or even offensive, I manage to stay calm. I'm also much more optimistic, which is a big deal to me because I used to wake up every morning with the belief that the universe is out to get me. So in this video I'll talk about the habits that have helped me stop giving a fuck. The first one is outsmart the Machiavellians. One of the types of people that really got on my nerves were the Machiavellians. You know the type, they are nice to you, they flatter you a lot, you trust them, and you confide in them. But then they will share what you said with other people, and that might get you in trouble. Or you have these drama queens in your family or social circle who will pit people against each other. What annoyed me about these people is that what they are doing is pointless. I mean, if you're playing the political game, do it to win something big. And most importantly, don't lose something bigger. You know, you have noticed how these Machiavellians will lie and cheat, but then their brilliant schemes are quickly revealed. And everyone hates them or knows about them. So they might gain something in the short term, but they will lose much more in the long term. But here's what I didn't understand at the time. They're not trying to win. The real reason for their diabolical plots is that they are addicted to drama, they're addicted to conflict. It makes them feel alive. And if you can ignore them or make fun of them, then these fake Machiavellians won't be able to cause much damage. However, what should really concern you are what I like to call the gifted Machiavellians. These people are very charismatic, usually they have a lot of power, and what's worse is that they are malicious, meaning they have the intention and the necessary resources to hurt you a lot. Now, outsmarting them is beyond the scope of this video, so check out my free book, link in the description. So the first habit is to recognize and try to outsmart the Machiavellians. The second habit is to stop consuming polarizing content. You have noticed how the loudest, most extreme voices online seem to rise to the top, and there's a simple reason for that. Outrage is profitable. The more dramatic the message, the more people pay attention. And yes, that stuff is entertaining. It will raise your adrenaline levels, especially if you argue with people in the comment section. The problem is that, first, it's addictive. You start to like feeling enraged, and you love the hit you get from telling someone they are a dumb MF. Second, the way you look at the world will gradually change. You will categorize people into good and idiots, my side and the enemy. You don't hear what someone is saying anymore, you only hear which side you think they belong to. In other words, you're training your brain to put simplicity above all and ignore nuance. As a result, you become less patient with people and less resilient. You know, failure is much more painful than it used to be. So during the day, you have this relentless feeling of frustration, like nothing ever works out. You're also exhausted, even though you haven't done any intense physical activity. And what do you do to feel better? You pick up the phone and start scrolling. So it's a vicious cycle. You watch extreme content, you get angry, you're not able to stop thinking about it even when you are off the phone, and then you consume more content to feel better. The next habit is to stop demonizing people. When you decide that someone you watch on TV or social media is evil, you will obsess over them and make yourself unnecessarily angry. Carrying that negativity for a long time will affect your mental and physical health. It's the same thing when you hate people in your everyday life. You get the same negative effects. Now look, I understand really well that when someone hurts you, it's tempting to categorize them as a terrible person. But that mindset can be very limiting. When you build this narrative that they are the villain and you are the victim, then they take a lot of space in your mind. Obviously, this will make you more resentful, but it will also make it challenging to outsmart them, because your judgment is clouded. You're not looking at the reality as it is. There have been, and there are, some truly horrible, evil monsters out there. There's no question about that. But we are not facing dictators or criminal masterminds. Most of us will have to deal with ordinary toxic people. So there's no need to demonize them. They are just people driven by self-interest, insecurity, immaturity, stupidity, take your pick. Curb your expectations. This is a big one. A lot of our frustration comes from expecting people to be responsible and act like grown-ups. The thing is that we don't live in that ideal state. We act out of stress, habit, ego, fear, distraction, and whatever problem we're facing right now. We are inconsistent by nature. Sometimes we show up as our best, sometimes we don't. Now, we have a choice in how we respond to this. We can get cynical or nihilistic and treat the flaws as proof that humanity sucks. Or we can accept that corruption, greed, and stupidity are an inseparable part of human nature. That doesn't mean giving up. It means that you will still fight to improve the situation, but you will stop feeling betrayed by it. So lowering your expectations about people will help you view the situation in a more optimistic way, or even find it funny despite how dramatic it might be. The final lesson is also extremely important. You need to understand that your beliefs are just beliefs. Humans are the smartest animals on the planet. We climbed out of the food chain, we built cities, we created science, invented memes. We are doing pretty well for ourselves. At least until the supercomputers will enslave us. But even with all of that intelligence, we are still limited. Because here's the thing, our brain does not work like a camera. It doesn't capture reality as it is. Our brain is more like a storyteller. It will take pieces of information from here and there, and it will form a compelling narrative so the world makes sense to us. And because that story feels real, you treat it as reality itself. Now let's go a bit deeper. You have the timeless principles. These are the things that are objectively true. Gravity, evolution, thermodynamics, etc. Even if we burn all of the science books, give it enough time and people in the future will stumble upon the same principles. Next, we have the worldview. This is how you interpret what's happening around you. It will influence what you notice in a sea of information, what you value, and what you choose to live or fight for. Finally, we have the methods. These are the tools and strategies you use to solve your problems. Here's the important part. Your worldview and your methods are not sacred. They change with time. In fact, they should change with time. For example, surgeons used to wear the filth and blood from their operations like a badge of honor. They would go from one patient to the next without washing their hands. They were proud of how experienced they looked. Then one doctor came along with a wild, radical idea. He was like, what if we, and hear me out, washed our hands? Now you would think that the medical community would test his idea, see the results, and celebrate him, right? Well, they didn't. They mocked him, his career collapsed, he had a breakdown, he was committed to an asylum by his own colleagues, and was likely beaten by the guards. And the tragic irony is that he died by the same kind of infection he had been trying to prevent. To give you more examples, people once believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. They believed slavery was normal. They believed that women shouldn't have basic rights, and these weren't the opinions of some small groups of bigots. They were accepted by almost everyone. So recognize that even if you are absolutely convinced that you are right, you might still be wrong. In addition, you might come up with creative solutions that work today, but eventually, hopefully, you or someone else will find a better way. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.